Was it ironic that you wrote about John Norman Collins with knowing someone who had found the body? Did it just turn out that way? I know you were from that area.
It wasn't ironic. In fact, when I began writing for the Crime Library, I mentioned Collins because they really didn't know who he was, and that was certainly an investigation I was most familiar with. So it was very much intended for me to write about it. At the time, however, I had never spoken to him, and since that time I have talked with him. But I do want to say something about this idea if he's good for one, he's good for them all, because that very first victim, in fact, she was pregnant, and the man she was involved with at the time was a pretty good suspect. There was also an odd incident where, she'd been lying outside in the summer sun for a month, 2 months.
Long time. Wow. Yeah.
Quite a long time, to the point where the people I knew thought it was a deer carcass. But so they took her to the funeral home. It was a closed casket, and a young man showed up and wanted pictures. The people at the funeral home couldn't remember what he looked like, but they did not identify Collins as that man.
Said he was a friend of the family.
He said he's a friend of the family.
Yep.
And yet he wanted to take her picture with the open casket. He was not a friend of the family. So that's all I'm saying. We've had a couple of cases that people have attributed to Collins because it was around the same time period with some similar M.O., and it turns out now they've been solved and attributed to other people.
Like the Jane
and
Mixer.
That's where I say, let's not just group them all together just because they're in the same general area,
right,
same general time frame, because we have already found that other people have in fact been convicted, and we don't want to get into a tunnel vision situation.
Case in point, Jane Mixer, it was Gary Letterman.
Yeah, exactly.
And the copycat.
Yeah, the copycat. And
for the Michigan murders.
Exactly right. So you make a great point there, Catherine. Tell us quickly, if you can, as we get down to our final minutes here, the book we talked about, The Devil's Dozen. You're really caught up in this forensic. You love it, and you've done a great job writing about it over the years. Talk about your book, The Devil's Dozen.
Well, that's where I'd written a history of serial murder, the human predator, going all the way back to ancient Rome. And The Devil's Dozen was where I picked 12 cases of serial murder investigation that actually changed the face of forensics, of investigation. DNA came from a serial murder case. And so I picked ones that through the past century have actually had an impact on how these cases get investigated and even how other cases get investigated.
And it's fair to say that John Norman Collins is not mentioned there because he's not considered a serial killer because he was only convicted on the one case.
Yeah, and he didn't have a really notable forensic invention or innovation happen in his case either. I mean, we have well over 1,000 serial murder cases in the world. I picked 12 that really made an important contribution.
Dr. Ramsland, luminol didn't exist back then, did it?
It did exist, but it wasn't used. Certainly not as extensively as it is. I think it was in the 50s that
it was discovered.
I think they might have used it in Fatal Vision. I'm not sure.
I don't know.
I can't remember.
Yeah, I think it's
but
been around
there was
for a while,
one thing they did use in the Collins case that they thought was extremely important, cutting edge science, which is nuclear activation analysis. And we don't no longer really think of that today the way they thought of it then, as being, the way to establish a link. It isn't used.
Your thoughts on what she just said about that not being used now, Dr. Weck?
About what not being used?
Nuclear activation analysis.
Oh, yeah. No. NA, that's right. NAA, absolutely. Wasn't used. In fact, we raised the fuss about that in the John F. Kennedy case, that they hadn't used neutron activation analysis. An observation maybe to, as you begin to wind up, of a philosophical note to be picked up another time, that while hardliners, call them what you will, people who are more prosecutorially oriented and so on, complain a great deal and have complained about the U.S. Supreme Court decisions that came down in the 60s and the Earl Warren Court and so on, Escobedo and Wainwright and so on and so forth. Just think, I think there's a direct correlation between the diminution of hard line, unchallenged, unfettered, uncontrolled activities and tactics by homicide detectives, moving a guy around from one station to another, never allowing the defense attorney to get anywhere near him for maybe 2 or 3 days, putting his head in the toilet bowl, etc. And then with the correlation between that and the development then of forensic science. So as we've gotten away from those kinds of barbaric tactics and moved more toward a civilized approach, in my opinion, so have we found it necessary to continuously increase and make more sophisticated our forensic scientific input, and that's why we wind up with people like Catherine Ramsland.
Great point, Dr. Webb. Hey, absolutely. I'm so glad to have you both on the line at the same time. Like I said, in the future, we hope to do that again. Catherine, as I let you go here in the last minute, pretty much other than Collins trying to get to Canada or something like that, he's not really shooting for any appeal. It's been 40 years. It's pretty much a done
there's no
deal.
appeals, no. He's done with all that. In fact, I don't think he has any hope of going anywhere.
He is from this area. He went to St. Clement High School. He lived here in Centerline, Michigan, and this case happened some 40 years ago, and then finally convicted in 1970. And of course, Sarah, we want to get back to some of your books in the future here in the next coming weeks.
Don't worry about that. They'll be there.
No worry. We're going to be getting into the Ramsey case, and of course, we talked about Fatal Vision, which is in Cause of Death. All great books, and of course, Devil's Dozen, and go to Catherine's website. Some great reading there. Both of you, I want to thank you both very much. These are fabulous books. I'm still in the middle of reading everything. You guys got to slow down and quit writing. I can't keep up. Hey, I want to thank you, Catherine Ramsland. Thank you so much.
She'll have knocked off another book.
Yeah, there you go. Absolutely. Dr. Beck, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say she grinds them out. It's like just making dinner. She just writes a book.
Yeah, he does too, and he does a great job. I love that book that you have there.
Yeah, they're both great writers.
Thanks for having us out, folks.
Yeah, and you can get a hold of us at writefromtheauthor at yahoo.com, and there's our phone number, 586-258-2000. Cyril, we're going to make sure you get some copies of this. You've been fabulous on the show week in and week out. We will have you back next week. Yes, he is. And Catherine, we will have you back in the future.
Okay, great.
Thank you both very much. Have a great night.
Dr.
Thank you, Cyril.
Good night.
Okay.
Thank you, Catherine. That'll do it from Right From the Author. I'm Joe Cochran, Jeff Hansen. We'll see you next time on Right From the Author and find out what really happened.